think there were not many people who understood just how broad his interests were and how supportive he was of an astonishingly wide range.
Few could have known the sheer depth of Prince William's character or the vast scope of his interests until an unforgettable moment in the royal family's history unfolded in Buckingham Palace. For years, the British monarchy seemed to follow a traditional, predictable course. First, King Charles, then Prince William. This linear path, neat and orderly as it may have seemed, was about to be shattered by a hidden, long-held secret that would change everything. A secret that had been quietly carried by Princess Anne, the Queen's daughter, who had always been the steady, reliable member of the royal family, showing up, never chasing headlines, and keeping a low profile. She was the calm amidst the storm, the one people trusted because she never sought the spotlight. But beneath that composed exterior, Princess Anne was harboring a powerful truth, a truth that could alter the future of the monarchy forever. For years, Anne had kept a secret, one given to her by none other than her mother, Queen Elizabeth II, before her death. It was a message, a final wish, entrusted solely to Anne, meant to remain hidden until the time was right for its revelation. It wasn't shared with courtiers, nor was it meant for the public eye. This letter, written in the Queen's own hand, was meant for Anne and her alone, and now, with the weight of history pressing down on her, Princess Anne felt the time had come to speak up. What did this letter say, and how would it impact the royal family in ways no one could have predicted? This is where the story truly begins. In that foggy, quiet night in London, with the shadows of Buckingham Palace wrapping around the ancient stone walls, Anne made a decision. It was time to reveal the Queen's message. She summoned King Charles and Prince William to a private, closed-door meeting. No advisors, no staff, just the three of them. The room where they gathered was an old one. Heavy curtains blocked the faint light from the streetlights outside, and dark wood paneling lined the walls. Portraits of kings and queens long past hung silently, their eyes seemingly watching every movement. The air was thick with unspoken tension as Anne placed the well-worn letter on the table. The paper had clearly been handled many times, its edges soft from where Anne had held it in her hands, weighing its contents for far longer than anyone outside the palace walls had known. Charles, though calm on the surface, couldn't help but tremble as he picked up the letter. His fingers shook ever so slightly as he unfolded it, and William leaned in, frowning, reading every word twice. The room fell silent, save for the ticking of a clock on the mantel, as both men processed what was before them. Outside, the city slumbered, blissfully unaware of the monumental shift taking place behind the palace walls. The Queen's letter was clear. It didn't mention Charles, it didn't even mention William, despite being the heir apparent. Instead, it named someone else entirely, a name that took both men by surprise: Catherine, the Princess of Wales. The Queen had not just envisioned Catherine as the future Queen Consort, she had envisioned her as the future of the monarchy itself. This was a shocking revelation, one that placed Catherine not a royal by birth, but a woman who had earned the people's love and trust at the heart of the monarchy's future. The Queen believed that the survival of the crown rested not in the hands of the traditional heirs, but with Catherine, the woman who had proven herself time and again, not through birthright, but through her actions, her strength, and her genuine connection to the people. King Charles, his face ashen with disbelief, was the first to break the silence. His voice cracked as he muttered, almost to himself, "This isn't how it's done." He looked tired, worn down, as if the weight of his reign had already taken its toll. He had never imagined such a turn of events, and yet, there it was, in black and white. William, typically composed, sat still, his gaze fixed on the letter, his hands clenched and unclenched in his lap as he absorbed the weight of his mother's words. He remained silent for what felt like an eternity. The room was heavy with emotion, grief, confusion, and the sense that something monumental was unfolding. Anne, for her part, did not argue or attempt to persuade them. She wasn't there to fight, she was there to fulfill her mother's final wish. Her tone was calm, but firm. She wasn't asking for agreement, but rather presenting the truth as it had been given to her. And deep down, Anne believed it too. Catherine was different. She wasn't just another royal figurehead. She had proven her worth not by blood, but by her heart. William finally spoke, his voice low, tinged with both curiosity and frustration. "Why didn't she tell us before?" Anne's smile was small, almost sad. Maybe she didn't think you were ready to hear it. And so they sat in silence, the three of them, together in that small, dimly lit room, each of them aware that whatever decision they made next would shape the future of the monarchy in ways no one could have predicted. Meanwhile, across the palace, Catherine was in a completely different part of the building, blissfully unaware of the seismic shift occurring in the halls above. She had just tucked her children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, into bed and was now sitting by a window, a cup of tea cooling beside her. The fog outside mirrored the restlessness she felt inside, though she didn't understand why. Little did she know that her life and the future of the monarchy was about to be rewritten. Catherine had never sought power. She had never chased the throne. She had always done her duty quietly, properly, without fuss. She smiled when it was necessary, listened when it was her turn, and protected her children fiercely. The Queen had seen all of this. She had recognized Catherine's unique strength and the quiet dignity with which she carried herself. It was that very spirit that the Queen believed would shape the monarchy's future. Back in the meeting room, the letter sat on the table, an undeniable force that seemed to pulse with the weight of history. Anne stood up, smoothing her skirt, and made one final statement before leaving the room to change the course of royal history. "The world is changing," she said softly. "We can either change with it or be left behind." There was no immediate answer, only the echo of her words hanging in the air. But in that silence, a decision began to take root. Quietly, stubbornly, like the first crack of dawn that breaks the night. The monarchy, as the world thought it knew it, was already shifting. The next morning came slowly over London, grey and heavy, but inside Buckingham Palace, the air was charged with a nervous energy. A secret meeting was about to take place, a meeting that would change the royal family forever. Princess Anne walked into the room, her demeanor calm, but her mission clear. In her hand, she held a simple leather folder, a folder that contained the Queen's final wish, a wish that could shake the very foundations of the monarchy. King Charles followed her in, his face a mask of composure, though his eyes betrayed his anxiety. And finally, Prince William entered, his regal bearing betraying none of the internal fire burning beneath the surface. This was the moment of reckoning. The room was charged with tension. Anne wasted no time. She placed the folder on the large mahogany table and made her statement. "This is Her Majesty's final wish," she said, her voice unwavering. "Not mine, not Charles's, not William's, hers." And as they read the Queen's words, it became clear Catherine was not just to be the consort of the next king, she was to be the future. The Queen had known that the monarchy needed more than blood, it needed heart, and Catherine had that in spades. The room erupted in whispers. King Charles slammed his fist on the table, his voice trembling with disbelief. "This is madness," he muttered. "Succession can't just be rewritten." But Anne's gaze remained steady, unwavering. Mother wasn't confused, she was certain. And then William spoke, his voice raw with emotion. "And what about me? What happens to everything I've worked for?" The future of the British monarchy was no longer in question. It was about to be rewritten, one decision, one letter, and one woman at a time. When the news broke that Queen Elizabeth II had passed, the world stood still. King Charles III now wore the crown, but it felt a little too large for him. The mantle of leadership his mother had carried so effortlessly now weighed heavily on his shoulders, a burden compounded by a complex past. Charles had lived through personal turmoil, his messy divorce, his long journey with Camilla, and despite his passionate opinions and public service, he could never quite fill the shoes left by his mother. He was respected, sure, but the love that had been showered on the late Queen wasn't easily transferred. In the wake of the Queen's death, the monarchy's future became more uncertain by the day. For a brief moment, the nation mourned together, united in grief. But that solidarity was fleeting. The monarchy, once the beating heart of British life, now seemed to teeter on the edge of irrelevance. Younger generations began questioning its place in a modern world. In Australia, the Caribbean, and beyond, the calls for the monarchy to relinquish its hold were growing louder. Buckingham Palace could no longer rely solely on the unwavering loyalty of the past. It had to prove its worth anew. For Prince William, this pressure was unbearable. As the heir apparent, every move he made was scrutinized. His mistakes, real or imagined, were magnified. Even his marriage to Catherine, the people's darling, turned into a double-edged sword. The public adored her, but with every passing day, William's light seemed to dim in comparison. Then there was Harry, the rogue prince, now living on the other side of the Atlantic, throwing accusations that deepened already raw wounds. William could feel it. The monarchy was fragile. It was standing on shaky ground, and the people knew it. Catherine, on the other hand, remained a calming force. While the palace churned with rumors and whispers, she continued with her work, visiting hospitals, comforting children, and championing causes like mental health. She did not seek the spotlight, it found her, and she handled it with grace, never letting it consume her. It was this quiet strength that set her apart. No one expected her to become the monarch who would reshape the future of the royal family, but perhaps that was the very reason she might be the one the monarchy needed most. Behind closed doors, Anne, steady as ever, knew that the monarchy would not survive unless it evolved. The Queen had seen it coming long before anyone else. Elizabeth II, a woman who had sat at the throne for over 6 decades, quietly knew that the monarchy could no longer continue on the same path. She had made her choice in silence, and it was Catherine's face she trusted to lead the family into the future, not because of birthright, but because of hope. Hope for a monarchy that could still be relevant in the 21st century. But Anne wasn't the only one aware of the quiet transformation taking place. The weight of tradition and duty still loomed over everyone within the walls of Buckingham Palace. The press had not yet caught wind of the royal family's inner turmoil, and the public continued to admire the monarchy for its unyielding traditions. Ceremonial dinners, state visits, and royal portraits all presented a perfect image. But behind that image, cracks were beginning to show. A fault line was slowly forming, a pressure that threatened to split the royal family wide open. At the center of this tension was the undeniable truth. The monarchy's facade, so carefully maintained for centuries, was weaker than it seemed. For the first time, the world saw that the strength of the monarchy would no longer come from bloodlines or age-old laws, but from the quiet, unassuming strength of a woman who had never asked for the crown, but who might wear it better than anyone before her. The House of Windsor, built over centuries, stood on the edge, and the world watched, holding its breath. Would it crumble, or would it rise again under the guidance of someone unexpected? And then, something extraordinary happened. The Queen's wish was revealed. It came to light not through an official announcement, but through the whispers of palace staff. Maids who had overheard conversations witnessed the decision unfold. The world began to realize what Elizabeth II had planned all along. But this revelation sparked a fierce debate. Some royalists felt it was wrong for Catherine to assume the throne while her husband, William, was still alive and next in line. They argued that Catherine, though adored by the public, lacked political experience and had spent most of her life caring for her children. How could she lead the nation? But there was another faction that understood the Queen's reasoning. They believed she knew what was best for the future of the monarchy. The debate over Catherine's suitability to rule became a subject of intense scrutiny, and as people dug deeper into her background, what they uncovered shocked them. Catherine Elizabeth Middleton, born on January 9, 1982, was not the typical royal. Raised in a comfortable but not lavish home in Berkshire, Catherine didn't grow up in castles. Her father, Michael Middleton, was a flight dispatcher, and her mother, Carol, had once worked as a flight attendant. On her father's side, Catherine's family had long roots in British society, even hosting royals in the early 20th century. But on her mother's side, the Middletons had humble origins, with ancestors who had worked as coal miners. This rare blend of tradition and humility shaped Catherine into someone who understood both the weight of royal duty and the importance of staying grounded. At just 2 years old, Catherine's family moved to a larger home, but she had not been born with the privileges of royalty. Yet, despite her humble beginnings, Catherine quickly gained a reputation for her hard work and grace. She rose above the challenges she faced, learning how to navigate life with the same quiet confidence that would eventually win the hearts of millions around the world. As the pressure continued to mount, Catherine's resilience became undeniable. She never chased the crown, she had never even sought fame, and perhaps that's exactly why, when the time came, she was the one who seemed destined to wear it. Through it all, Catherine remained a steady force. She never asked for this role, but in a world where everything was changing, maybe that was exactly why she was the one who would change everything. As the House of Windsor stood on the edge of a new era, the question remained, would they rise again through the quiet strength of a woman who had never sought the throne but who might wear it better than anyone before her? Keep watching, because the story is only just beginning. It all been worth it? These were questions Prince William struggled with in the wake of his mother's letter. For most of his life, he had been conditioned to believe that he was the future of the monarchy, that his destiny was shaped by bloodlines, tradition, and duty. But now, the revelation from Queen Elizabeth, a deeply personal message that named Catherine, not him, as the future, left him grappling with his own place in the royal family's narrative. In the quiet halls of Buckingham Palace, surrounded by centuries of royal history, William found himself at a crossroads. How could he come to terms with the fact that, according to the Queen, it was not his reign that would save the monarchy, but Catherine's? The woman he had known for so long, who had stood by his side through thick and thin, was now being recognized as the very heart of the royal family's future. And the more he reflected on it, the more William came to understand why his grandmother had come to this conclusion. Catherine's unwavering strength, her humility, and her ability to connect with people had won her the hearts of the public in ways William could not have predicted. But it wasn't just the Queen's words that troubled him. It was the idea that his path, the one he had always assumed was his alone to walk, might no longer be as clear-cut as he had imagined. How could he reconcile his own ambitions with the reality that his future might no longer be about the throne? Was his place in the monarchy truly secure, or was the future of the crown now uncertain? As these thoughts raced through William's mind, he struggled with a complex mix of emotions. There was love for Catherine, of course. He loved her with all his heart, admired her strength and her dedication to both their family and the causes that mattered to her. But there was also a deep, gnawing pain, a feeling of displacement that he had never anticipated. He had always been the heir, always been the one expected to take on the mantle of leadership. And now, suddenly, he was faced with the idea that the monarchy's future might lie in someone else's hands. Despite these internal battles, William's respect for Catherine only grew. He realized, as he came to terms with the Queen's message, that Catherine had not only earned the love and trust of the people, but had done so in her own quiet, steady way. She had built her life without ever seeking attention or accolades, and in doing so, she had shown the very qualities the monarchy needed to evolve with the changing world. She had embraced her role as a royal, not for the power or the title, but for the chance to make a real difference. Her charity work, her focus on mental health, her deep commitment to children's causes, these were the things that had made her a beloved figure, both in Britain and around the world. For William, this was an awakening. He had always known Catherine was special, but now, with the weight of his family's legacy resting on their shoulders, he began to see her in an entirely new light. She wasn't just the woman he loved, she was the future of the monarchy. And while this realization didn't come without its share of pain, it also offered William a new perspective on his own role. Perhaps he wouldn't be the sole figurehead of the monarchy. Perhaps the future would be shared with a woman who had earned her place not through inheritance, but through her own merits, her own tireless dedication, and her own heart. But even as he began to understand Catherine's place in the royal family's future, William couldn't help but wonder about his own destiny. What would it mean for him, the future king, to step aside or share his role with his wife? Was he ready for that kind of transition? And what would it mean for the public's expectations of him? He had been prepared for a life of service, for a role defined by duty and tradition. But now that role was shifting, and he was left to figure out where he fit into this new vision of the monarchy. The conversations that followed were difficult, to say the least. In the months that followed the Queen's letter, William and Catherine found themselves at the center of intense public scrutiny. Their every move was watched, their every decision analyzed by a media that was eager to see how this new dynamic would play out. Would William continue on his path to the throne, or would he find a new purpose as a supportive partner to Catherine? And how would the royal family navigate the delicate balance between tradition and progress? Despite the challenges, William and Catherine stood firm. They continued their royal duties, supporting each other through the ups and downs of public life. Catherine, ever graceful, remained focused on the causes she held dear. Her work with mental health initiatives, her dedication to early childhood education, and her passion for supporting families all over the world were just a few of the many ways she quietly influenced the course of the monarchy's future. And yet, in the back of William's mind, a question lingered. How could he continue to honor his own legacy, his own path, while also supporting Catherine as she embraced her new role? The answer wasn't clear, but one thing was certain. Whatever lay ahead for the royal family, it would be a partnership like no other. William and Catherine were a team, one that had weathered countless storms together, and one that was now poised to take the monarchy into a new era. As the days went on, the royal family continued to adapt to this new reality. Prince William, while still the heir to the throne, began to find peace with the idea that the monarchy's future was not just about a single individual. It was about a partnership, about shared leadership, and about the strength that came from standing together. For Catherine, it was a validation of the quiet work she had done for years and a testament to the enduring power of love, duty, and compassion. The journey ahead for the British monarchy is still unfolding, and while there are many questions left unanswered, one thing is certain. Catherine Middleton, now the Princess of Wales, is poised to be at the heart of it all. Her story is one of resilience, strength, and quiet determination, a story that will continue to shape the future of the royal family for generations to come. 40 Mini. Had Prince William been too cautious, too reserved, too burdened by the unrelenting expectations placed upon him from a young age? This question hung in the air as he observed his wife, Catherine, step into a role none of them had foreseen. What William felt was not resentment, but awe, a deep, almost fearful reverence for the woman who had quietly become the central figure in the royal family's future. Catherine had not asked for this monumental responsibility. She had simply been herself. A woman with a quiet strength and innate grace, she had captured not only the hearts of the British people, but, most significantly, the trust of a queen who had witnessed generations of monarchs rise and fall. The royal family had endured so much, the passing of a beloved queen, the uncertainty of what the future held for the monarchy, and the personal trials each family member had faced. In the midst of all this turbulence, one thing became crystal clear: Catherine's response to the call of duty. Many had assumed that when the time came, Catherine would take on the crown without hesitation, as expected of anyone poised to become the future queen. Royalty, after all, was a life of duty and public service, an existence steeped in history. But Catherine's reaction defied the traditional expectations that so often define royal responses to such monumental questions. When asked whether she was ready to shoulder the enormous responsibility of the crown, her response surprised even King Charles and Prince William. It wasn't the enthusiastic acceptance that many would have anticipated from a future queen. It wasn't the quick, determined reply that one might expect of someone accustomed to a life of public service. Instead, Catherine replied with calm resolve, "Although it is the desire of many to lead the monarchy, it is also the desire of every wife to keep peace within her family. Therefore, I need time to think about it." Her answer was not simply a polite response to a question. It was a profound reflection of her character, her depth, her humanity, and most importantly, her awareness of the gravity of the responsibility before her. It wasn't a yes or no, and it certainly wasn't the rushed, impulsive reaction that many in her position might have given. It was a thoughtful, measured response that spoke volumes about the kind of leader Catherine could become. She wasn't jumping into a role she had never sought. She was carefully considering the emotional, familial, and personal consequences of such a monumental decision. Catherine's words were a revelation, one that resonated with something that had been missing from the monarchy for some time: balance. In a world where the pressures of royal duty often eclipse personal reflection, Catherine chose to step back and reflect. The weight of the crown was not something she took lightly, and her measured response to such a significant question demonstrated that she understood the full scope of her potential role. Catherine wasn't someone to rush into a decision. She embodied the qualities of patience, clarity, and thoughtful consideration. In this moment, she revealed the kind of leadership that the monarchy so desperately needed, one that valued reflection, balance, and most of all, the preservation of family harmony. Queen Elizabeth II had chosen Catherine for a reason, and it was in moments like this that the late monarch's wisdom shone through. The Queen had long recognized that the monarchy could not remain rooted in tradition alone. It needed someone who could navigate the complexities of royal duty while simultaneously adapting to the changing world around them. Catherine, with her graceful yet firm approach to life in the public eye, was more than just a figurehead. She was the bridge between tradition and the modernity that the monarchy was striving to embody. Her thoughtful response was not just an answer to the question at hand, but a window into the kind of monarch she might become. Catherine's pause to reflect signaled that the royal family's future wasn't going to be one defined solely by tradition or the unrelenting pressure of royal expectations. Instead, it would be shaped by a leader who recognized the complexities of modern life, the nuances of public duty, and the importance of family. Catherine wasn't eager to seize power. Rather, she was deeply committed to ensuring that the role of the monarchy remained a unifying force for the family and the nation alike. This response, this careful consideration, wasn't just the decision of a woman stepping into a title. It was the deliberate choice of a leader, one who understood that the future of the monarchy hinged on more than just the ceremonial weight of the crown. It was about the legacy they would leave, the example they would set, and the balance they would strike between public duty and personal responsibility. Catherine's moment of reflection was not weakness, it was strength. She had shown that the monarchy's future could still be a place where thoughtful, human leadership could exist alongside centuries-old traditions. For Prince William, watching his wife navigate this complex moment was a revelation in itself. He had long been groomed for the throne, carrying with him the weight of generations of royal expectations. Yet in this moment, it was Catherine who took center stage, not through her actions, but through her reflection. It wasn't lost on William that Catherine's approach was far more than just an emotional response. It was a reflection of the type of leadership the monarchy needed as it moved into the 21st century. and in that realization, William began to see a future that perhaps didn't unfold in the way he had always imagined it. Instead of a monarchy solely shaped by his actions, it was a monarchy that would be shaped by Catherine's wisdom, empathy, and carefully considered decisions. As the royal family grappled with their own shifting roles, one thing was abundantly clear: Catherine had become more than just a consort. She was emerging as a potential cornerstone for the future of the monarchy, someone who could navigate the increasingly delicate balance between public duty and personal well-being, tradition, and modernity. Her careful, considered approach was a sign that the royal family could still evolve and meet the demands of a changing world without losing sight of the values that had sustained it for centuries. In a time when the monarchy's future seemed increasingly uncertain, Catherine's response to the call of duty offered something that had been missing for far too long: a sense of hope for the future. A future in which the monarchy could be both compassionate and resilient, adaptable yet respectful of its heritage. As the world awaited Catherine's final decision, the royal family knew that her thoughtful leadership would be the key to navigating the challenges ahead. The monarchy, as it continued to evolve, had found in Catherine the strength it needed to move forward. In the face of mounting scrutiny, Catherine's response to the royal family's expectations was a quiet yet profound declaration. Many within the royal fold, including the public, had long seen her as the perfect candidate, often praising her poised public image and elegant composure. Yet Queen Elizabeth, with her deep understanding of the monarchy's needs and intricacies, recognized something far beyond Catherine's outward grace. For the Queen, Catherine's true strength lay not in her ability to maintain a flawless exterior, but in her capacity to balance the heavy burden of the crown with the equally delicate dynamics of family life, all while being under constant, sometimes relentless, public scrutiny. Catherine's decision to take time and thoughtfully reflect on the immense responsibility of the role was not a mere hesitation. It was an astute acknowledgement of what true leadership entails. Her deliberation was a powerful message to the world that she placed the unity of the royal family above all else. She wasn't rushing into power, nor was she intoxicated by the allure of the crown. She knew well that leadership wasn't about the pursuit of titles, but about understanding the weight of those titles and their far-reaching consequences. Her approach demonstrated the wisdom that comes from reflection, balance, and most importantly, the understanding that true strength in leadership comes from a deep-seated sense of responsibility and care for the people you serve. This moment, where Catherine chose to take a step back and carefully consider the gravity of her decision, stood in stark contrast to previous royal leaderships that had often been driven by the demands of the crown and public expectation. What was most striking about Catherine's response was her clear and unwavering commitment to preserving the familial bonds that have historically been the cornerstone of the monarchy. She recognized that the monarchy's true strength lies not in the individual who wears the crown, but in the unity of the family that upholds the institution, and she was determined not to let personal ambition come at the cost of that unity. For King Charles and Prince William, this moment marked a turning point in their own understanding of monarchy and leadership. Both men, shaped by the rigorous demands of royal duty, had long been prepared for the eventual assumption of power. Charles, through decades of anticipation, and William, through the knowledge that one day the crown would pass to him. But neither of them had anticipated the shift that was about to occur, one that would challenge their assumptions about what it means to lead the monarchy in the 21st century. Charles, now king, found himself confronted with a reality he hadn't fully expected. His mother, Queen Elizabeth, had made a monumental decision by placing her trust in Catherine. The decision wasn't made lightly. It was clear that the monarchy could no longer rely solely on tradition and lineage. It needed someone who could balance the demands of the crown with the evolving expectations of the modern world. For Charles, the weight of this decision wasn't just about succession, it was about understanding that the monarchy needed to adapt in order to thrive. Watching Catherine, a woman who had never sought the crown but was now being entrusted with such a pivotal role, must have been both humbling and a little unsettling for him. He had spent his life preparing for this moment, but now, the future of the monarchy seemed to be in the hands of someone he had never anticipated, Catherine. Prince William, too, found himself grappling with his own future. As the heir apparent, every move he made had been scrutinized by the public, but this moment forced him to confront a future that didn't align with his earlier expectations. For much of his life, William had known that he was the future king, but seeing Catherine emerge as a potential stabilizing force in the monarchy raised questions he hadn't fully considered. He had always envisioned himself as the one to lead, but in this moment, he was faced with the reality that Catherine, though never seeking power, was the one who appeared ready to take on the mantle of leadership with the necessary poise, wisdom, and compassion. For William, the realization that Catherine could very well be the savior of the monarchy, a role he had long anticipated for himself, was both a moment of admiration and perhaps a touch of awe. This defining moment highlighted a key truth. Leadership in the royal family was not just about titles or power, but about the ability to handle the responsibilities that came with them. Catherine had shown that she could wield influence not out of a desire for power, but because of her deep understanding of what that influence meant. She understood that leadership was about setting an example, maintaining balance, and prioritizing the family's unity above all else. This was not a woman driven by the temptation of royalty's glittering facade, but a woman who recognized that her role would not only shape her future, but the future of the monarchy itself. Her decision to pause, reflect, and measure the true weight of the crown was a decision based not on ambition, but on wisdom.
It was a decision that showcased a level of leadership that the monarchy needed, a level of leadership that could carry the institution forward, rather than merely preserve it in a form that no longer suited the modern world. For King Charles, the implications of this decision were both personal and professional. As a father, he must have been proud to see his son, William, come into his own, understanding the nuances of leadership and the need for balance. But as a husband, Charles also had to navigate the complexities of Catherine's new role alongside Camilla's established position as Queen Consort. It wasn't just about adjusting to the responsibilities of a father and king. It was about realizing that the monarchy's future might not unfold exactly as he had imagined. The shift in power, or rather the shift in the family dynamic, was now undeniable. It was clear that Catherine was stepping into a leadership role that might redefine what it meant to be a royal. As the world watched this dramatic turn of events, the royal family was faced with the reality that the monarchy was at a crossroads. It was no longer enough to uphold tradition and expect the institution to remain relevant. Instead, they needed someone who could balance the demands of public duty with the needs of a changing world, someone who could carry the monarchy into the future without losing sight of the principles that had held it together for centuries. Catherine had already proven that she was the right person for this task. Her thoughtful, measured response to the crown symbolized a new chapter for the monarchy, one where leadership was grounded in empathy, understanding, and above all, family unity. The decision made by Queen Elizabeth, though quiet and unspoken at the time, was now becoming ever more evident. She had placed her trust in Catherine because she understood that the monarchy needed someone who could adapt to the changing tides of public opinion, someone who could navigate the complexities of royal life while also preserving its core values. And in this moment, Catherine showed that she had the wisdom, the clarity, and the resolve to do just that. What do you think of Catherine's decision to reflect before accepting the crown? Was it a necessary pause for the sake of the monarchy's future, or did it reveal deeper challenges within the royal family? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth coverage of the royal family's evolving story. Her response wasn't merely a simple reply, it was a reflection of her profound wisdom and understanding of the monumental role she was being asked to take on. And perhaps that is what made her the perfect fit for it. Catherine wasn't driven by personal ambition. She was motivated by an unwavering sense of duty, but more significantly, by the love and care she felt for her family. Her decision to pause and reflect before taking on the responsibility of the crown highlighted her deep understanding of what the position entailed, not just for her, but for everyone around her. This thoughtful pause stood in stark contrast to the more impulsive leadership styles that had sometimes defined the monarchy in the past. In a world where the thirst for power drives individuals to rush into positions of influence, Catherine's approach demonstrated something altogether different. She wasn't driven by the allure of power, but by the clarity and wisdom needed to handle such a weighty responsibility. She didn't rush into a role she hadn't sought. This in itself was a powerful statement. It was a sign of someone who not only understood the significance of the crown, but was capable of leading with patience, empathy, and consideration. For King Charles and Prince William, this moment marked a shift. The burden of leadership, once firmly and almost exclusively carried by Charles, now seemed to be evolving. The realization that leadership within the monarchy might look quite different than previously imagined began to dawn on both father and son. William particularly began to understand that the future of the monarchy was not simply about succession, it was about rethinking how the monarchy could be led in a changing world. However, it was Catherine's response, a measured and deliberate decision that brought a sense of balance and clarity to a royal family that had struggled for years to find both.
Her response demonstrated something vital that had been missing from the monarchy for a long time: a sense of calm, balance, and clarity. Catherine's ability to navigate the delicate line between public duty and personal family life set her apart as a leader in her own right. She wasn't just stepping into the role for the sake of tradition or out of a sense of obligation. She approached it with the wisdom to understand that her leadership would shape not only her own legacy, but the future of the monarchy itself. The unfolding drama within the royal family, with its tensions and uncertainties, continued to captivate the world. Yet, one undeniable truth emerged. Catherine's response to the call of duty gave the monarchy something it had lacked for some time: hope for the future. She wasn't just a symbolic figurehead in a long line of queens consort. Instead, she was a woman who had the potential to restore balance to the royal family, to renew public faith in the monarchy, and to ensure the institution's relevance in a rapidly changing world. As the royal family moved forward into a new era, the question still remained: was Catherine truly the right choice to lead the monarchy into its next chapter? The Queen had believed so, and now, more than ever, that faith in Catherine's strength, wisdom, and ability to adapt seemed well placed. In a world where everything seemed to be shifting beneath the monarchy's feet, Catherine's steady and reflective approach might be the key to ensuring its future success. Was Catherine the right choice? Only time would reveal the full answer. However, her decision to pause, to reflect, and to carefully consider stepping into the role spoke volumes about her character. The monarchy had been built on centuries of tradition, but it was Catherine who appeared poised to carry that tradition into the future. The royal family, once steeped in formality and rigid expectation, now had a chance to embrace a new era under a leader who combined strength with empathy, tradition with modernity. The future was uncertain, but with Catherine at its helm, the monarchy's future seemed as hopeful as ever.